All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to the Cybersecurity Fortress, Building Defense in Depth with Sophos and Veeam. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Veeam and Sophos and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm so happy that I get to be here to hang out with all of you today and be a part of this conversation because, hey, I want to hear about the fortress, right? I mean, cyber threats and data breaches are becoming more and more common, and attack vectors and threat actors are evolving constantly. So I think we all know that it's more important than ever to stay active and stay alert. But there's this fine line between getting into too much negativity or fear, right? I've talked about this before, and I used to work as a wilderness guide, if you didn't know that. And we would talk a lot about the difference between being bear aware and bear annoyed. So bear aware, having awareness, being prepared, planning ahead, and being bear annoyed is a bit paralyzing. And this is kind of that difference, right? The difference between awareness and taking action and planning ahead versus being totally paralyzed by fear. And today we're going to talk about that action step. We're going to talk about planning ahead, gathering the information that you need, getting prepared so that you are ready to take that action. And to help us discuss that, we have some top experts here with us from Veeam and from Sophos who are going to talk to us about the state of data protection, how you can align your security teams with your backup team, and how Sophos and Veeam can help. This is such a cool conversation. I cannot wait to get started. We've got lots to cover, so I'm going to zip through some housekeeping information and then we'll get this show on the road. All right, first, I want to draw your attention on over to the questions section of your webinar console. I see lots of highs and hellos out there. Hey, Martin, Zhang, Tony, and Marteza. I see Sanjay and Shantaram. Howdy to you, James. Another James. We've got lots of Jameses out there. Awesome. All right, lots of people chiming in, saying hi and hello. If you haven't already done so, give that questions tab a little bit of a test run right now. Give us a hi, give us a wave, tell us how your day is going, tell us what you're up to. And then when we go through our session today, if you do have any issues that pop up, if something kind of goes a little awry, the first thing you're going to do is a browser refresh. Try that to start. If the browser refresh doesn't work, you can post in this questions. Hi, Jeff. Jeff says hi, Jess. Hi, Jeff. You can post in this questions window here, and we will be there to help you out. So we are here with you throughout the day today. We're there to help. Browser refresh is step one, and then give us a shout out in this questions tab if that doesn't work, and we will be there right with you. All right, we're going to take another stop on our guided tour of your audience console. If you've been here with me before, which I see many familiar names, you already know where we're headed. We're going to go over to that handouts tab. So make sure you click into the handouts tab, scroll around, get all those resources and follow-ups. You can register for a really cool event. Make sure you've got that tab open and ready to go because you're going to want that after we wrap. Hi, Adam. Good to see you too. Always happy to see returning faces on a webinar. What an awesome crew we have here with us today. I'm loving this. All right. Well, as always, we have some content. Yes, we have a lot of content to give away, but we also have a prize to give away to you today. As you can see up on your screen, we have a $250 Amazon gift card, and we will give that away as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. You do need to be here live and present in order to qualify to win, and you need to meet all the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those prize and conditions are, no problem. Head on over to the handouts tab we were just talking about, click in, scroll down, and you will find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. All right, well, that is it. That is all I had for housekeeping. I am loving, I can barely keep up with all the highs and hellos coming in right now. I see lots of, oh, hey, Martin, hey, Gilbert, glad to see you both. Hi, Dave, loving this. All right, well, we've got quite the crew here with us, and we are ready to jump into our webinar. So let's get our speakers rolling here. Very happy to introduce you all to our dynamic duo here with us today from Veeam and Sophos. What a cool partnership. Today we will be chatting with Emilee Tejas, Product Strategy Technologist, Office of the CTO at Veeam, and of course, Andrew Mundell, Principal Sales Engineer at Sophos. This is quite the crew we have here with us today. Emilee and Andrew, I know you have a lot of information to cover. We definitely want to leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I am going to hand things over to you. I think, Emilee, you're going to kick us off today. So the mic is all yours. Take it away.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you so much, everyone. So excited to be here. My name is Emilee Tejas. I am a product strategy technologist with the Office of the CTO here at Veeam. And joined with me today is a colleague from Sophos. Andrew, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Emilee, and thanks, Jess. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew. I'm one of the principal solutions engineers over at Sophos.
Perfect. Yeah. And so today, Andrew and I are going to be talking a little bit about, how to build a better defense in depth while leveraging the new integration between Veeam and Sophos. But just to kind of get things started here, let's kind of go through kind of the data, right? So why is this important for our security teams and our backup admins to be working better together? What does a layered security or defense in depth strategy look like? And then we're going to learn a little bit about how Sophos can help, as well as what Veeam can do in the back end. And then we'll leave some room for Q&A at the end. So let's get started with the data. So number one, this actually comes from the Data Protection Trends Report from 2024. And if you want to download the full report, that QR code is up in that top right-hand corner. So feel free to scan that and you'll get a link to the full readout. But one of the questions that was asked is, which would you consider to be the most important aspect of a modern or an innovative data protection solution for your organization? And with no surprise, right, number one is cyber integrated. As we've seen so much over the past few years, ransomware being top of mind, users getting hit almost on a daily basis from different companies. Having that cyber integrated platform and giving you a better layered strategy for data protection as well as data itself is kind of been top of mind for both CISOs and CIOs altogether. 41% said that they needed the mobility across clouds, so being able to move from platform to platform without having to be stuck with one in particular. And 20%, which is the combination of that 10% as well as this 9%, which is rounded up to 10, is want manageability. So being able to automate your recovery workflows, being able to have orchestration. So that way, when you initiate failovers between your most critical assets, you know that they're going to come online and that you're not going to have any failures and that you're going to be able to test and validate that your disaster recovery strategies are going to work. So that was number one. I mean, that's no surprise there. I think cybersecurity is just going to continue to go up. Andrew, are you guys seeing the same thing over at Sophos as far as, from your solution and what you're offering and that request coming from your customers as well?
We are, Emilee, and I think the first point there on integration is one of those big buzzwords in the cybersecurity industry right now. As an industry, as vendors, we are all trying to figure out the best way to work with each other. And I have a little bit of content later on to dig into that. I'll mention one more thing there. I'm so pleased to see automating those recovery workflows. I unfortunately bet that 2023 was going to be the year automation really took off. We didn't quite get there. I'm rebetting that for 2024. But the number of organizations that I've spoken to about ransomware recovery specifically, and when we dive a little deeper, they don't have those regular test plans, and it always scares me. It's backups are great when they're Schrodinger's backup and you don't know whether they're good or bad. So having automation in there and having the ability to be constantly assured that your data is safe is I'm really pleased to see that it's up that high.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm hoping we'll get automation for everyone very soon. Actually, another portion, it's not inside of this presentation, but it's part of that data protection trends report, was that only 13% of the organizations that were actually surveyed actually said that they had working modern workflows. So being able to enable that automation, right? The rest were either relying on a predefined script that wasn't actually tested, or they were rebuilding or doing it manually themselves. So yes, I'm 100% with you. I want to see that percentage of 13 increase, hopefully by the end of 2024. So moving on from that, so if we go into our next slide, so we talk about, ransomware and, the amount of organizations that have suffered from a ransomware attack. Again, this is a staggering number. And again, that 24% that say none, that could also be, well, maybe they just don't know about it yet, right? It could still be sitting in that dwelling period where it hasn't made itself known. So that 24% could go lower as the weeks go by from when these questions were asked. But one thing to call out from here is that you'll notice that 30% of organizations were actually hit quarterly versus the 24% that believe that they were not hit at all. So some staggering numbers right there. So when you start thinking about, well, how exactly were those organizations hit more than one time? Well, that has to come down to, the possibility of either not fixing the vulnerability, not cleaning the data properly when recovering, or even just going down to simple mistakes being made, but we weren't able to fix the situation at hand, right? So they're getting hit constantly back to back, and if you know anything about how long it takes to recover after a ransomware event, being hit quarterly, that could be your entire year spent of just spending time recovering back to back after a ransomware event, which is not going to be particularly fun for anybody. Andrew, any surprises there?
Unfortunately not. I think not to us over on the Sophos side. I think maybe folks in the audience might be just surprised at that scale of multiple ransomware attacks hitting an organization. We've not only seen stories of organizations going through some cleanup and not realizing that the original root cause was an unmanaged system on their network. And as soon as they roll everything back, maybe taking multiple months and a lot of dollars, they just get attacked again, potentially sometimes by that same threat actor. We had a really good story, though, towards the middle of last year, where we observed a single customer, a single organization, be attacked by two different ransomware gangs at the exact same time. So that was super interesting. They used different points of entry. They were using different off-the-shelf ransomware. So not only is it sometimes you're getting hit across the period of a year, sometimes it's happening at the same time.
Wow. Yeah, that is some scary stuff. Um, Yeah, and so I mean, I think for some customers, right, that's the big indicator in our heads of, okay, well, let's make sure that we're doing everything that we can to harden the environment and have a better layered security strategy in place, and then making sure that we have a better data protection and recovery system in place, so that way we know that we can recover from events like that. Wow, it's a great story. Thanks for sharing. So kind of changing gears here. So this was the Protection Trends Report that came out in 2024. We're going to move to our Ransomware Trends Report 2020 to 2023, which was released late last year. And this is going to be focusing more on cyber and backup teams. So number one, we asked this question to the organization. So in order for them to participate in this Ransomware Trends Report, they had to have been or had a effective or successful breach inside of their organization to be able to answer these questions. So these are real people that have been hit by ransomware and have gone through the process of having that breach and what they would have done, or looking back into it, how they see themselves moving forward. So one of those questions was, how how much improvement do you believe is required in order for our organization's IT backup teams and your cybersecurity teams to be fully aligned? And you'll see right there, right, that 43% believe that a significant improvement is required between that alignment. And if we were to look at this a little bit further, we even broke this down based off of the role type of who answered this, right? So you can see a big majority of that significant improvement is required is coming from CISO and security ops and SEC pros, as well as our backup administrators, as well as our IT operations, right? So, I mean, you can even argue that 13, 15, or 17% of the red line that you see down below as well is also a big initial improvement. So you have a good chunk of people, of data, right, saying that they need to change and embrace both teams together to bring them together, so that way we have a better effective plan for dealing with ransomware and other types of breaches.
I absolutely love this slide, Emilee, because what it I think it broadcasts in a really simple way is cybersecurity is at the forefront of what everyone is thinking about. So whether we're talking about CISOs who have the S officially in their job title out to day-to-day operations, everybody wants to work more closely together. And yeah, I love that data, and hopefully that's something we'll knock off during 2024 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And our final last data slide is again from Ransomware Trends 2023. Does your organization have a risk management program that regularly drives either a security roadmap, strategy, and or implementations? And only 35% said yes, and that it was operating well. And then you could see more than half had actually answered yes, but we need to see some improvements inside of there. And again, we broke this down by roles. So you could see that, from a CISO, we've asked this question in the Ransomware Trends 2022 report. So going from 2022 to 2023, the CISOs dropped from 60% to 50%, with them saying, hey, we have done an increase and it's operating well. Our security pros, you could see the same exact thing. Everybody is moving towards having that better working risk management plan. We just need to get there, right? I'm still kind of worried about those that answered with the 1% that no, but we are interested. Hopefully they are starting that process now, or they have completed it by now. As well as we have that small 12% of no, that we are not building one. But I think the biggest call out here is everybody else is doing risk management strategy. If you don't have one, you should have one.
For sure. I really like that 52% that we need to improve. I'm taking the philosophy away from that most people have something, but they always think they can do a little bit better. So I really like that that's such a big number. Whenever we're talking to organizations about risk, our attitude from the Sophos side is that it's one of the most fundamental things to understand, because your risk exposure, your risk appetite can inform and help you make all sorts of other decisions, not only in that cybersecurity space, but in when we get into things like data protection and disaster recovery. So the operational side of the business, really having a good understanding of what that risk appetite is and what that risk exposure is just really helpful to have everyone talking in the same language and talking about the same goals and objectives.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. So I think this will be a perfect segue to turn it over to you, Andrew, to talk a little bit about Sophos and what you guys do to help customers to, elevate themselves from a security side.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Emilee. I wanted to kind of start this in a slightly different way than if anyone's seen some other Sophos presentations before. We're gonna think of it a little bit differently. I wanted to start by talking about data. So mentioned that risk is interesting. I think for a long time, security has all been about data. So I wanted to think like where data are born, where is all of this data coming from? So some organizations are lucky enough to have the stuff in that blue box. That's the entire Sophos stack. But you'll see there's places in the technology, places in cybersecurity that we don't have a presence. Backup and data protection is a pretty good example of that, which is one of the reasons why we're so excited to be working with the rest of the Veeam team. So if we expand that out and take a look at across the rest of the landscape, what other places are data coming from? And what I think you'll see is a relatively rare slide. We're showing you all of these other vendors, some of them competing in our particular spaces, but we're actually saying we think it's really important for us to come together and figure out the best way of protecting our customers. And for a really long time, the answer to that was, well, let's just take all this data. Let's just take all of this data we have and let's put it in a SIM. And SIMs are really interesting because we started off with this concept of great, a database. I'll go put every single piece of data I get out of all of my systems, whatever that means, whether it's running an agent to collect some data, whether it's sending things over syslog and sending everything in. But ultimately, what we've seen in the last few years as the necessity to deal with cybersecurity incidents much more quickly and in as simple a way as possible, we don't think SIMs are the best approach. In fact, and this might be a little controversial opinion here, Emilee, I look forward to checking out the chat. I'm going to say I think SIMs is where data goes to die, because ultimately we put all of this stuff in there, and on a good day we go find the individual pieces that we want, but there's a significant lack of correlation and prioritization of that data, and that's largely because of the strain that we're putting on those SIMs. Because we're putting all of that data into those SIMs, they become really good platforms for compliance. For a few months down the line, needing to go and pull data and prove compliance, they're really good for that. But when you're engaging in hand-to-hand combat, you're trying to attack trying to deal with an attacker who is on your systems right now, we don't think SIMs are the best way to go. So
Yeah.
what do we need instead? Sorry, Emilee.
No, and I was just going to even throw in there, right? You could even argue that most customers will even set up their SIM and their alert tools, and then they get hit with alert fatigue, right? How often are they going to be checking for those alerts every single time that they're going to be well enough versed to be able to capture something when it's the most crucial, right? Especially if we are to draw this down to a smaller shop or a smaller organization where you have one security admin and a larger IT operations team that's having to wear many hats. Some of these things can fall through the cracks. So, I mean, to your point, it is a very controversial tagline, but I do agree. I've seen it with customers when we ask them, well, what SIM tools are you using and how are you working with your security teams? And they're like, yeah, we just drop everything, we send them all the logs, and then, they'll get back to us if they find anything. But most of the time, we see all these alerts that build up. I have 10,000s of emails inside my inbox. I'm not going to check every single one of those. So I agree with you. And again, like, I think it looks like from the chat too, we're seeing some people that are agreeing and some people that are also kind of saying the same thing, right? Fine tuning is definitely needed when you are working with your SIM tool.
Nothing quite like a controversial statement to fuel some folks to join the chat. So yeah, thanks, Emilee. I'm so glad you talked about the alert fatigue piece as well. One of the things I always like to mention with alert fatigue is that word fatigue. That's a medical. We take that from the medical industry, where what it means is that medical practitioners are so tired, they're so overstimulated by everything happening that they start to make bad decisions. And I know it's, again, let's talk about drama two different ways. So it's a little over dramatic, but I really do think that applies.
Yeah.
So moving into what are the ways that Sophos can help with that? So we have been developing a security operations platform, which is not a SIM. We've optimize that entire platform across these three areas. So the concepts of prevention, detection, and response. And what that means is on that left-hand side, there's all of our data sources again. And we take feeds in from all of those data sources. Now, Sophos, I think, is really well known as an endpoint security company. So not only do we bring all of the telemetry in from our own endpoint software, but as you saw on that previous slide, if organizations are running CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, McAfee, Symantec, Broadcom, choose the Trellix, I should get everyone's new names in there. We think it's really important to draw that data in as well. Once we've done that, we go through a 3-step process. So we collect all of that data inside of our platform, and we're performing normalization. And that's kind of one of the big first differences with SIEM. I'm sure everyone who's on this session and has sat down and started injecting data into a SIEM, you will be used to this concept of Palo having their own schema, their own way of rating risk and rating event severity. Your Fortinets may do it differently. CrowdStrike may do it differently. Sophos may do it differently. So the first thing we need to do is bring all of that data in and contextualize it into a simple, common data structure. When we're doing that contextualization, because we see the ability to bring in all of those different data feeds, we can also start to spot things that maybe aren't touching traditional places that you would expect your EDR tool to see. So things like email and identity, being able to bring in more contextual data. And then that last most important point is correlate. So that correlation piece, and this goes right to your point, Emilee, about alert fatigue. With that, we are looking across all of these different data sources. We're taking parts of telemetry from those vendors as well as our own analytics, and we're able to say, this thing here, this bundle of events that we've seen across your endpoint, your network, your firewall, and identity, these things now need a human being to respond to them. And then the last piece I'll mention is that approach, that security operations platform. We understand that lots of organizations, typically on the smaller side, they may not have the ability to staff up a full 24/7 by 365 security operations center. So one of the things that we're really pleased to offer as well is to give customers access to our managed detection and response service. They're using all of that same data. They're using that same platform, but now at 3 in the morning, at 5 p.m., the day before a national holiday, that team is constantly looking over all of your data, all of those signals, all of those correlated events that have come in, and they're taking action on your behalf, assuming you've delegated that to them. And that's one of the big things that we think is really important. When you think about the flow of an attack, we get to that response piece. We get to kind of the last part that you have to carry out. You can delegate over to our MDR team which response actions you want them to take. And that can be things like isolating systems, adding blocks for IP addresses or for other communications. And then what they'll do with customers is work hand in hand on that very last part, that remediation. So as Emilee mentioned earlier, we see a lot of repeat attacks because organizations haven't yet gotten around to patching that original root cause. So by using a managed service to deal with all of that noise, to deal with all of the stuff that would traditionally cause a team to feel that fatigue, that organization can now really go and spend that time dealing with the root causes of these things. And I've got just one more slide to mention here, Emilee. I'm not going to go through all of the details on this slide, but it's the classic so what slide. We think that by leveraging that security operations platform, but especially by leveraging our MDR service, there's 3 significant elements to that. The first is less risk. We are blocking 99.98, that is a real number, I promise, 99.98% of threats immediately. We have the fastest published response times and mean time to investigate, mean time to respond times that we've seen in the industry. That removal of all of that effort from the team ultimately means organizations can be more efficient. And believe it or not, these the MDR service can often provide lower costs. especially in organizations where they've perhaps had an incident in the past where their cybersecurity insurance premiums are perhaps rising, and we think everyone's are rising. We've worked with partners in the insurance industry to provide fixed cost and automatic approval for Sophos MDR customers. So we're really excited about those three kind of main pillars of actually reducing risk for an organization, giving time back to the team there to carry on with other business initiatives, and ultimately lowering costs to fund other things like cybersecurity insurance or other initiatives that the organizations are looking to carry out.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I think, you brought up some really, really great points, Andrew. And, for most customers, I love that MDR solution because, again, when you start thinking about how everybody now needs to be a security expert. Everybody needs to be thinking security first, right? Having that additional hands-on approach is definitely going to help customers that are trying to transition from that backup day-to-day sysadmin type of role into more of a forward-thinking security operations team, but also getting that additional safety net from those that have been doing it longer and can ensure that, they're not going to be one of those that has been hit multiple times by a breach. So very fantastic. Thank you so much. So now let's move on to the Veeam data platform. So like Andrew mentioned, right, Sophos is definitely right in the beginning of helping to take in all of that data, understand it better, and then being able to make decisions on how we want to execute against different types of threats or different types of anomalies that are taking place. And where Veeam comes in is obviously right at the end, where that remediation or that recovery aspect comes up. So being able to recover after an event has taken place, whether that is fire, flood, blood, or this case, right, a ransomware attack or a breach. So being able to recover your data, recover it cleanly, effectively, and as quick as possible is going to be where the Veeam data platform truly shines. So let's talk a little bit about the platform. So here we are. So this is the Veeam data platform, and there's a few things we want to call out here. So number one, so we've have over 400 plus different customers all around the world. So global company, global recognition allocates. A few things to know about here is that we could support multiple types of workloads. So if you have your machines that are currently residing on-prem, or you have machines that reside in a physical layer and now they're moving into the virtual, or we have virtual that are moving up into the cloud, whether that's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, know that Veeam has options to be able to protect your data regardless of where it lives. And that's kind of where we want to kind of hit on that data mobility. We know that as customers, what you have set right now inside of your environment isn't going to be there for permanently, right? Whatever decision you make, security or technology in general, is always changing. So being able to adapt and make those changes and being able to protect that data where you can have SLA strategies that stay in place and that are going to be validated and that are going to work is very key here. And that's where Veeam definitely outshines. Next, we could talk a little bit about SaaS-based applications because, again, wherever that data lives, it is your job to protect it. And we talk a lot about the shared responsibility model. Regardless of where your data is, if it was once hosted as a Microsoft Exchange server on-prem, you used to back that up, you used to protect it yourselves. Well, now that it's moved up into M365, just because it lives in M365 doesn't mean that you've gotten away from the responsibility of having to protect and back up that data and being able to support the data, whether your users delete files or emails or calendars, for example. So being able to recover that data as you see fit and manage it fully is going to be key here. Now, when it comes to that SaaS-based application like M365, we do offer backup as a service with Veeam Data Cloud. So depending on how you want to consume your data protection of choice, so if you want to manage it fully, you can with the Veeam data platform of downloading an ISO off of our website and going through the process of installing and managing it fully yourself. Or you can also leverage the Veeam Data Cloud. And with the Veeam Data Cloud, we offer backup as a service for your M365 environment, as well as your Azure cloud workloads with other platforms soon to come. So you have different ways that you can consume the product, depending on, where exactly where exactly your interests lie and the management of the backup process or the backup data itself. And then, of course, we have our new announcement with Sophos, and then wrapping that up with our Cyber Secure program. Now, when we jump into the data platform in particular, right, we could talk a little bit about your cyber resiliency strategy. And again, backup for us is your best line of defense, because when you have to recover that data, you want to be sure that you have that snapshot point in time of what that data looked like, and then being able to capture that and recover it as you see fit. So when we start looking at this from an option of what does data look like? Well, number one, we do data security. So data security gives us options to have either backups that'll go directly to object storage. So if you want to have a cloud strategy, or if you have invested in large S3 compatible on-prem devices, know that you could leverage the Veeam data platform to write to those devices themselves. Secure access with multi-factor authentication, ensuring that we have, a secure way that we are accessing the console. And then mutability within Azure. So this was something that came up most recently, where we're able to ensure that when you're writing your data into Azure itself, that data is going to be immutable. It's not going to be susceptible to any type of deletion. When we look at data recovery, that's where Veeam definitely shines. So being able to recover fast from cyber attacks, so being able to actively detect any types of threats that are happening. And this is actually happening in line when we're doing the backups themselves. So when we're running a backup, the first time you run a backup, we're going to get a baseline, and that's going to give us a good correlation of how that data looked like at that point in time. So we're going to look at the files, the amount of compression that has happened or taken place, and things of that nature. The next time that it runs, if we expect or suspect anomaly that's taking place, whether that's the compression has now doubled in size, or if we see a large amount of files that have now been encrypted that wasn't before then, if we see changes where blocks of data are now missing, those are going to be different types of alerts and alarms that'll be set off during that time of the backup to let you know that we suspect that there might be something possibly malicious happening with this particular virtual machine itself. And when we look at the reliable RPO with DR as a service, you have your options to write to a Veeam cloud service provider of choice. So if you don't have a secondary DR site, know that you could leverage our network of Veeam cloud service providers that run Veeam at their own data centers. So you can take your data and you can have that data be sent to them for either storing a second term or a third copy, as well as running replication. So they could stand up your workloads for you, and you could be able to run your workloads inside of their data center if you were never to have access to your on-prem environment. And then data freedom, again, we hit on that data cloud mobility story, but again, just having that option to be able to move from platform to platform wherever you see fit. So being able to recover VMware vSphere workloads as Azure VMs or AWS EC2 instances, that's all built within the platform itself, and the data protection is included as part of that. And then finally, cloud recovery orchestration. So orchestration, something that Andrew and I were both very big fans of right in the beginning as we started this presentation. So knowing that you can orchestrate your backups as direct recovery points or recovery them directly to Microsoft Azure. And this can be done inside of an actual documented, tested plan. So essentially, I could take all my backups, I can point them to an Azure subscription, which is the one that my company owns and we're running, and I can outline or I can lay out all of my workloads and then the Azure virtual machines, what types of resources that they have available, all of the networking and things like that. And then inside of that process of that plan, I could go ahead and trigger a launch or an orchestration job to start the recovery process of recovering on-prem workloads, whether that was a vSphere virtual machine or an agent-based backup, and recover that as an Azure virtual machine inside of my Azure subscription. So Veeam can manage that all for you, give you a fully documented plan, so that way it's valid, you get tested, and you can ensure that SLAs are being met for your different types of recoveries. So now that we've covered both the Veeam and the Sophos side, let's go ahead and let's cover us working better together. So when we talk about why Veeam and why Sophos, so I think for one, you could definitely take away is that, you know, both of our products are very well known in the space, but also on top of that, you know, what we see truly is bringing value to our customers is having that capability of working with other products in other categories and layering in your different types of security and response plans specifically, right? Because Veeam, for our example, we're multi-cloud, we're vendor agnostic, we're storage agnostic. So we really want to be able to fit for all of our customers, depending on where your technology or your cybersecurity strategy takes you. And I think we saw the same thing with Sophos, right? You guys, Andrew, you have your different ways that you work with other different types of products to be able to give customers a better understanding of how they can be better effective when it comes to responding to breaches and anomalies and things like that that are happening within their space. So when we talk about together Sophos and Veeam, it's being able to detect cyber attacks by closely monitoring the environment for threats, responding better to those events by either by doing a thorough investigation and determining, you know, what's the best way to protect your backups and then possibly recover from those. And then recovery, of course, which is that getting that data back quickly. So and ensuring that that data set and those backups are going to be recovered and it's clean data and it's going to be reliable, especially when we are inside of a breached environment. So what does this look like? Andrew, do you want to cover this portion of what it looks like from the Sophos side?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said earlier, we're so excited to be working with a leader in the data recovery and protection space in Veeam. And with version 12.1 of Veeam, the back end, the underpinnings bring together that capability of taking all of those really rich, interesting data-centric alerts that the Veeam platform is now generating and integrating them into that Sophos security operations platform. We call that Sophos Central. That is a single cloud-hosted management platform, literally for everything we make. So every single product that we make, all of that SOC analyst workflow, that's all handled through that one platform. And it really couldn't be more simple. We have a virtual machine, a virtual appliance that acts as a syslog collector. So it's literally just a case of spinning up one of those virtual machines, either in your VMware, your Hyper-V, or your AWS environment, and pointing Veeam and any of those other products that you might use, the Palo Altos, the firewalls, any other tools like that that use syslog, you just point all of those events over at that Sophos log collector. What happens then is that middle bit, that really interesting bit of taking all of that data, correlating it through with the context of all the other information that we're being given. So a couple of quick examples of that. One of the examples there is that Veeam will send us an alert if the multi-factor authentication is being tampered with. So if Veeam's MFA is being attempted to be tampered with, that's a pretty good indication that something bad might be happening. Perhaps an attacker has been able to steal some admin, some high privilege credentials, and now they're planning on trying to attack your backups. So this goes into that middle part where we're bringing in all of that data and we're correlating it. So to look at a quick example, one of the things that that Veeam can let us know is if multi-factor authentication has been disabled. That's a pretty good indicator that maybe some credentials have been stolen, some high privilege access, and an attacker might be trying to plan an attack against the backup systems. So we receive a whole bunch of data that we call entities. And what that will let us do is very simply identify the host where these things were happening. It'll help us identify the potential account that's been compromised. And with all of those other data feeds from identity, from sensors out on the endpoint and the network, that's where we can start to begin that correlation. So once we have that correlation, that's where our service team goes in and begins investigating that data. So in a very short period of time, we can go from useful, interesting, really data-centric alerts coming into that platform from Veeam to our team actively investigating and actively responding to an incident.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm gonna just swap it back over to this slide right before, right? Because I think one of the biggest things that most customers are gonna ask is, okay, so I have Veeam, so how do I get started, right? And so when we start looking at this, so this has been available with 12.1, which was the latest release of the Veeam data platform. And essentially inside of the 12.1 release, you'll have down here, and I'm gonna bring it up here. So this middle box that you see, this is going to be built inside of the Veeam backup and replication console. So you'll have a way that you could actually add in your syslog server. So that syslog server that Sophos is going to be managing to collect all the logs from the Veeam data platform itself. So that way they could drop into their data lake. So that's going to be the process from a Veeam side of things, is just upgrading to 12.1 and turning on that events forwarding into the syslog server. And then all of those rich events that are happening within the Veeam data protection or the Veeam data platform itself are going to be captured and then being able to be analyzed by Sophos, so that way they could identify any potential anomalies or things that are taking place. So a big portion there that you'll be able to take advantage of. But for customers that are looking at this from a sense of, hey, this looks like something that we definitely want to be utilizing. We are a Sophos customer, or maybe we are Veeam customer, but not Sophos, or vice versa. I think the number one question that we are seeing right now inside of the chat is, well, how do we get started? So Andrew, if I am a customer of Veeam and I'm not yet a customer of Sophos, how can I get started with leveraging this integration?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I'll say is welcome. Thanks for coming over to Sophos. As I mentioned at the beginning, we know you see other people, right? We know there's other technology tools there. So one of the most simple ways to get started is to go over to the Sophos website, follow the free trial link. You'll get access to our platform and you'll be able to see what that UI looks like. Getting started next, it's really simple to deploy some of those integrations and get access to that log collector. I say a VM for your VMware, your Hyper-V, or your AWS virtualization platforms. Typically within a couple of hours, it can really be that quick, and that's how long you're gonna take going from end to end, getting all of that set up and getting a look at all of that rich data that's coming in. And if you are using other products, you can go ahead and include those integrations as well. Even if it's endpoint, we've got like a little stub agent, we call it the sensor, that you can go and install on all of your endpoints, regardless of what other antivirus or threat protection agent they're running, and they'll just feed more data in over to the Sophos platform. But Emilee, I know we've probably got some customers on this call who are Sophos customers but not Veeam customers. So I'm gonna flip that same question right back to you and say, for those Sophos customers who are interested in some of the great stuff that Veeam does, how should they get started?
Yeah, and very similar, right? So Veeam offers free trials on our website. So all you got to do is visit veeam.com and you could go ahead and you could start a 30-day trial today and it'll give you all the full featured functionality. So there's nothing that's limiting inside of the license key itself for a trial. So you could simply just download the ISO, install it onto a Windows machine, and then from there you could start your process of backing up your workloads on-prem or even backing up any of your workloads that reside in AWS, Google, or even Azure. So there's multiple different ways that you could do that with just a quick 30-day trial and just simply just pointing to that syslog and being able to start capture that data through Sophos. So really great options for you available. I saw another question in here as far as like how do we get started, or like not how do we get started, but is there any training or anything like that available so that way you can follow through with how to get this process working? And the answer is yes. So with Veeam, you could actually go on to veeam.com. There's something called Veeam University. It'll walk you through at least the Veeam portion of how to get started with Veeam. So doing the installation, going through creating your first backup jobs, your replication jobs, how to perform different types of restores, and that's all free training. We also have something called hands-on labs. So if you don't have time to go through an entire install yourself and you just want to test out the software and kind of get a feel for it, you could do a hands-on lab, which is going to be a fully contained environment that you'll have access to for a few hours or a day or so. And it'll take you through different types of scenarios that you could to create backup jobs, or so that way so you can get familiar with the Veeam data platform itself without having to go through that entire management side of things. So two different ways that you could kind of get some training material, both free. Just simply go to veeam.com and you can see those options there. For you, Andrew, is there anything from Sophos as far as training or anything like that for how they could get started?
Yeah, all of our documentation is for the Veeam integration and for everything else is all live up on our website docs.sophos.com. So it's really simple to be able to get those systems in and running. We've also got official training that's delivered in person by our solutions engineering team and some other options there as well. I mentioned right at the top there that we've got that kind of security operations platform. So we try to make sure that we're delivering the training that's the best fit for our customers. That's why we tend to take the hands-on approach a little bit more, because it's such a wide space. We want to make sure that we're getting the exact right thing. And if you are a Sophos MDR customer, there's still training for you. There's some great capabilities in the tools that you can still make use of, even with that SOC dealing with all of the alerts on your behalf.
Perfect. Um, well, I think we still have some questions to get through. We're going to try to answer as best we can through the chat, but wanted to thank you all for joining us today. Just some few action items, right? If you guys want, feel free to join the Veeam Community Hub. That's community.veeam.com. On the Veeam Community Hub, you can meet all different types of Veeam users, but we're actually having free community events. So you could join those events. They're happening worldwide. We have some that are taking place in Boston, in New York, in DC, in Texas. So they're happening all over. And we actually have some folks from Sophos that will be joining us at those events that are going to be walking through, different ways that you can actually see this demonstration in action from both Sophos and Veeam side. So feel free to check that out on the Veeam community website, and then make sure you sign up so that way you can attend those events. They're all free.
Well, that's awesome, guys. Thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. The good news and bad news is we have to wrap it up. That's our bad news. I wish we could keep going, and we are out of time. The good news is you guys are incredible moderators. You asked and answered almost every question that we had in the chat. So I think we've gotten through as many as we can. And as you said, Emilee, we're going to make sure that we get back to anyone that we missed over live chat, and we'll also make sure that we send all of the questions to your team. So you will have a chance to follow up with them. I guess, to kind of bring it on home before we close off, any sort of, there's a lot of information we covered today. We've got all of the incredible data you guys started with, lots of digging into resiliency and what that actually means, which I think is so important to really fully understand. And I have to say, I love, Andrew, how often you really emphasize the importance of partnerships and in this larger industry, and kind of having these collaborative conversations and collaborative solutions. If there was sort of a final thought that you'd each want to leave us with, and maybe Andrew, I'll start with you, and Emilee, ask you to be the final word for the audience there. If anyone's feeling, overwhelmed, there's a lot of information. If there was one key takeaway or one action step that you'd want them to have in mind, Andrew, what would that be?
Jess, I'm going to choose two things if I may, but I'll make it really quick. The first is the whole collection is under a bucket I like to just call back to basics. So for the Veeam customers, or there aren't other backup solutions. No, it's only Veeam. If you're out there, test those backups. Use some of that automation to make sure that if you need to back up your data, that you're going to get the data back that you want. And from a security operations perspective, Emilee talked about fatigue of alerts. We know it's hard, but a lot of the time those alerts are being generated for a good reason. We see in the Sophos incident response practice, 70% of incidents that we investigate had alerts in the platform. So 70% of the time, there was a good lead that could have been investigated and stopped the attack. So I know it's super boring. Back to basics. Check those backups. Deal with those alerts.
I love it. Simple and important. Emilee, do you want to be our grand finale here? What's your last thought for
Yeah,
us?
no, I love those two tips because I'm gonna follow it up with some other back to basics, right? Which is just having open conversation. So for those of you that are here on the call that are backup administrators that aren't aware of what your security teams are leveraging, and if you're a security operations or security professional and you're not aware of what your backup administrators are doing, have conversations, right? Bridge that gap, because essentially there's a lot of great things that are happening specifically in our two industries to bring, I would say, bring the ransomware, the breaches or anomalies, closer together to be able to detect that and be able to effectively manage a response better for it. But that only happens if our teams are having conversations, right? So if you're a security professional, go ask your backup administrator, hey, what backups are we using? Walk me through what that process looks like. Let's make sure that we understand, what types of SLAs, how often are we testing, what's been the validated response for a lot of those. And if you're a backup administrator, ensure that you're having those conversations about the types of security tools that we're using inside of our environment, and seeing if there's a way that we could be integrating those closer together, so that way we have a better layered response to ransomware and to breaches.
I love that. And it's been a theme throughout our conversation today, whether we're talking about the collaboration between solution to solution, or just even within our own teams. I think sometimes we forget to talk to the person next to us and actually just have a conversation across silos. So thank you both. I think, back to basics is a great way to wrap this webinar up. You've given us so much to think about, and it's been a lot of fun. I've definitely learned a ton. So thank you both for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Appreciate
Thanks
the
so much.
time. Thank you, everybody.
All right, well, and the fun is not over yet, because as you can see, we have a prize giveaway lined up for all of you. So again, that $250 Amazon gift card going to someone live and lucky here with us at the webinar. But before we get into that, one last reminder to make sure you visit the handout section. So I saw a few people wondering about how to register for the event. Right there, linked in the handout section. So make sure you click on that, open that tab up and sign up. But don't go anywhere yet, because we'll do our little prize giveaway. So just get that tab open so it's there ready for you as soon as the webinar ends, because you're going to want to sign up for that event. All right, and I think it is time for our prize giveaway. $250 Amazon gift card going to Vinod Murthy from Colorado. Vinod Murthy from Colorado. Congratulations to you. We'll send you a message after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. And I think we're going to have to bring it to a close. I wish we could keep this conversation going, but we have reached the end of our time. So I want to send a big thank you on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team to the Veeam team, the Sophos team, for making this webinar possible, and especially to our incredible speakers here with us today, Andrew and Emilee, who have given us so much to think about. which of course always brings me around to all of you here with us today. I loved watching all the questions come in, all the comments, all the highs and hellos. We talked at the start about the difference between bear aware and bear annoyed. And I hope that maybe through this conversation, you're feeling a little bit less paranoid or paranoid and feeling a little bit more awareness, maybe armed with some great solutions, some steps, some action ideas, getting back to basics and the things that are going to be your next steps from this conversation. Because the conversation is just the starting point, right? Now you've got all this information and there's lots of research to dig into and lots of places to go from here. That's going to help you have that sense of preparedness, have that sense of peace and calm that we're all going for in this crazy, wild world, right? All right. Well, I hope that we'll get to continue these conversations again soon. Come back and join us for a webinar as soon as you can. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.